Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, from wherever you're joining me from your part of the world. My name is Dr. Dawnn Karen, and I am the host of Fashion Psychology TV. I am the world's first fashion psychologist, declared by the London Times, as well as the dress doctor, declared by the New York Times. And today's headlines, we will be breaking them down in segments. We will be having our Pop Flair segment where we dissect the hidden psychology behind celebrities' fashion choices and specifically how they tend to manipulate power and vulnerability in the court of public opinion. We will be discussing in that segment Diddy and the courtroom fashion. In the next segment, Global Posh, we will be unpacking the silent language of international style, revealing how geopolitics, protest, and cultural identity are stitched into the fabric of what the world wears. Specifically, we'll be talking about Swedish fashion. The next segment, Fad Mania, exposes the science behind viral trends and why we blindly obey or reject fleeting fashion cults and what that says about our collective psyche. Here we will be discussing labels. Does labels really change behavior? You heard of modus operandi or modus operandi, depending on which English pronunciation you would like to use. Well, I've coined the term modus anima. Now, modus anima, this segment, we explore how fashion becomes armor in the face of trauma, revealing the soul's unspoken responses. Here, too, we will be talking about Diddy's courtroom drama, but from the lens of Cassie. Delving in today's episode, the first segment, Pop Flair, Sean Diddy Combs. So if you have opened up your social media, your legacy media, you're watching that, you are going to see various perspectives on Sean Diddy Combs' case. I've been watching several commentators, several shows, several TikTokers, just to see what's being said and also to glean what's not being said. If you're unaware, I have appeared in the Southern District of New York courts. A while ago, I represented myself pro se litigant, and I went through about several lawyers because I was whistleblowing in the fashion industry, specifically fashion academia, and showing how it ties to the fashion industry. I don't want to head down to the Southern District of New York courts for the sake of avoiding flashbacks. So now that we're in a new chapter, we'll let my peers handle that and I'll report from afar. Okay, so Sean Diddy Combs, he is being charged with racketeering, sex trafficking, and transporting victims across state lines. Now, as I said, I've been watching various shows and various YouTubers, and I'm hearing what's not being said, but also what's being said. And one in which is TMZ. Shout out to Harvey Levin. Harvey Levin actually asked his audience, I'm wondering what is the psychology behind Diddy's fashion, and how will that influence the jurors? So the jury consists of 12 persons, okay? 8 of which are men and 4 who are female. The ages range from about 30s to 70s, okay? From various occupations. They live in various boroughs in New York City and some outside of New York City. Now, when Harvey Levin posed this question, my sorority sister texted me and said, "Dawnn, you need to look into this." And I'm like, yeah, I know. And so I wanted to wait till we have, a plethora of development so that I can really draw an analysis. And now we're on day 16 of the case. And, let's take a stab at Harvey Levin's question. So when we're talking about Diddy and what he's wearing, now we know that there are no cameras permitted in the courtroom. And so you're going to see all of these sketches on what Diddy is wearing and what he looks like. And the first thing that came to mind when I was doing a fashion psychological analysis was, we're used to seeing Diddy power dressing, right? Power dressing. Yes, Diddy, the narcissist, the main character in his life. We're used to seeing him dress very flashy, flamboyant. If you know, he is from Harlem. And if you know anything about Harlem's fashion in his generation, they were very, very flashy, slick talking individuals. Okay. That I know. I live moments away from Harlem. And so when I was looking at the sketches, I'm looking at Diddy. He used to travel with his barber, and I'm looking at his gray beard and his gray hair, and it reminded me of Young Miami when she was at an award show and she held up that sign that said Poppy, and the rapper JT is like nudging her, like, put the sign down, sis. You don't look, it's not given what it's supposed to be given. And I was thinking immediately, okay, Diddy is giving grandpa. Then I'm listening to the case and I'm hearing that he wanted Cassie to call him her grandfather's nickname, Pop Pop. And so I said, there goes Diddy in the courtroom looking like Pop Pop, aka Poppy. And I'm like, okay, who's ever styling Diddy, they're dressing him for vulnerability so that he can appeal to the jury. If he comes off as a old man who had some nefarious ways back in the day, then maybe he could sway the jury. Keep in mind, the jury consists of mostly men. And I'm wondering, will gender play a role in the fashion psychological analysis? Now, everyone, this is all happening below awareness. Most people are not aware of how your clothing can influence how you're being perceived. And maybe they think about it in terms of first impressions, but they don't think of the what's happening in tandem between the wearer and the perceiver. They're not thinking about that constant influence that's being developed. Okay. And so when we talk about those jurors, it makes me think of the deciding factor will be the generation. Because if you know, historically, generations, well, I don't even have to say historically, I'll just speak plainly. each generation, I will say, have their own thought processes. They have like a dominant thread that's woven through each generation. This thread, it's this dominant thought, this dominant belief system. Would Diddy be able to sway those men? It made me think, again, with the gray beard and the wholesome attire that's not flashy, they're seeing him less as a predator and just as a man in recovery. Are you getting what I'm putting down? Furthermore, shout out to Kempire of Kempire TV. Yes, I watch. Kempire actually talked about day 15 or day 14 that Diddy's sons came into the courtroom wearing the same blue attire as their father. And Kempire was like, what is the psychology behind that? And Kempire is I love Kempire. Kempire has a background in law, and I love how Kempire cites his sources and really encourages his audience to think beyond the surface. And so, as your fashion psychologist, the color blue I write about in my book, Dress Your Best Life, is synonymous with authority. It's synonymous with trust. It's synonymous with calming. So I'll keep you informed as I continue to watch the Courtroom saga from a fashion psychological lens. Next headline, sweetest fashion, is for our global posh segment, and the trend we're going to be exploring is the gris trend. Now, the gris trend is a minimalistic dad style, kind of laid back. So think linen trousers, think cashmere sweaters, think like a tweed jacket. So think along those lines. Now, children in Sweden are being dressed in this gris style, and it makes them appear like little adults. And if I were to examine this from a fashion psychological lens, what happens when we dress children like adults? Well, on an unconscious level, this happens pretty much below awareness. It happens automatically. People tend to attribute adult-like traits to the child. So that's erring on, the negative side. If we were to err on the positive side, the fact that the child is dressed in like a mimicry of its adult or its adult parent, it could actually be a form of empowerment, confidence boosting for the child. Now let's draw some parallels, and we will go from Sweden to America. And we have Little Miss Shirley, not to get confused with Shirley Temple, but Miss Shirley. That's her stage name. She is 4 years old. She has been gallivanting all around social media and recently made it to legacy media. Go, go, Miss Shirley. Now, in the court of public opinion, if you peruse the internet, you're going to see many people say that, Miss Shirley is being exploited. You'll also see many people praise Miss Shirley and her little line dancing, okay? So you'll see an array of responses, but recently the authorities allegedly were called on Miss Shirley and her mother. And she actually went from the stage, literally from a talk show, to the police station. And I couldn't help but to think about that little girl who had to go into a sterile, cold police station and sit in a hard chair and look up at, guys with guns and uniforms. And I'm like, all she was trying to do was just be happy on stage, with her mom looking out in the audience. And if we talk about African American culture and the sexual abuse that's in the culture that happens, that people necessarily don't talk about, it could be a way to protect Miss Shirley from unforeseeable events. So if we draw the parallel between the African American culture and Miss Shirley and the Swedish culture and the Greece trend, it's a bit nuanced, because it's two different lenses. One is being looked at as adorable. Oh my gosh, she looks so cute. And the other one is, oh no, she's being exploited. And so, case in point, this is why I define my fashion psychology field as the study and treatment of how color, image, style, shape, beauty affects human behavior while addressing cultural norms and cultural sensitivities. Those are the last 2 points: cultural norms and cultural sensitivities. So depending on where you are in the world, what culture you belong to, or what culture you subscribe to, or the culture you are under, things are viewed differently. Okay, clothing could be viewed differently on the person. So hopefully this is something that makes you expand your awareness when it comes to dressing children like adults. Shout out to Miss Shirley and all of the Greece trendy children. In our next segment, Fad Mania, I received another message from another sorority sister. This time it was on designer labels, giving us that confidence boost. She wanted me to talk about it. So I'll explain it like this. If you've taken a psychology course offline in IRL or even online, you'll hear about the placebo effect. The placebo effect essentially is when two groups are given a red pill, the other group is given a blue pill, but the groups are not told which pill is effective and which one is ineffective. Both groups and the results end up reporting that, hey, this pill did its job, it worked. However, the blue pill was the ineffective pill. Now, this is the placebo effect. The blue pill is the placebo here. And so you have to wonder, if we were to apply it to this particular segment, is it the designer labels that give you the confidence? Do you have to wear a specific label to get your confidence? Or could you wear a lesser known name brand, or even wear a label with your name on it? So let's zoom all the way out. If you've been following legacy media and social media, you've heard that China has revealed all of its trade secrets. China has revealed that everything, pretty much everything, is made in China. and then it is tagged in Europe and sold elsewhere. So the question now would be, would that fashion label, that designer label, that luxury brand, would it give you that same confidence boost if you knew it was made in China and not made in Europe? Its origin point was in China. Now let's zoom all the way out and let's head over to China. I was in China 2024. I was commissioned to go to China to do a keynote for the AICI 4th Annual Conference. AICI stands for Association of Image Consultants International. There, I was able to visit the fashion epicenter, Mars Frug's Mansion. Now, the Mars Frug's Mansion or pavilion or campus is exquisite. It was designed by Fred von Brandenburg. Now, it was completed in 2023. I was able to visit, and when I tell you I could not have my phone out, even as a guest, a keynote, I could not have my phone out. I could not take pictures of anything. And when I tell you the clothing was something otherworldly, this is no exaggeration. There was so much innovation in the usage of fabric and the way it's structured. I was left in awe. I felt as if I literally got into a time capsule and traveled to the future. So as I close out this segment, I'll leave you with the Mars Frug's 2023 Fashion Showcase. And I want you to ponder to yourself, are designer labels a placebo for your confidence, or are designer labels simply your social armor? The next headline is Cassie's courtroom trauma. So we are segueing back to the Sean Diddy Combs case. And this segment is called Modus Anima. You heard of modus operandi or modus operandi, depending on your pronunciation and where you are in the world. Modus Anima is basically a way the soul speaks through style. Okay, so what the soul cannot say, that shows up in sartorial choices of the person, if you will. When we were looking at Cassie's testimony, we needed to examine how clothing serves both as a witness and a shield in systemic cycles of abuse, where fabric holds memories that the body can't forget. So I wonder what sort of memories, on Cassie's body with that particular clothing item, such as the fabric or the color, right? How that will create some sort of memory for her. Will that create an aversion of, okay, I'm no longer going to wear a particular color or a particular fabric or a particular style because it reminds me of the day I had to go on stand, and say what everyone dare not to say, talking on a taboo subject such as, sex trafficking, sexual abuse, coercion, right? The unthinkable, the unspeakable. So the other thing that I thought about when taking a fashion psychological analysis, the epigenetic trauma of it all. So Cassie was on the stand, okay, pregnant and all. And I wondered, what trauma from that situation could be, implanted, or that child could have absorbed. Days later, she gave birth. Congratulations, Cassie. Congratulations, Cassie. You are seen and you are heard. You are so worthy. So, epigenetic trauma, I talk about that in my book, Dress Your Best Life. It's a term coined by Dr. Rachel Yehudi, but popularized in the book, The Body Keeps a Score, which all psychology people, sociology people know, by Bessel van der Kolk. Epigenetics, generational trauma that's passed down, and the traits and the things that come with it. Okay, the things that come with it. It also made me think, fashion as a form of protection. Did Cassie's courtroom attire, her being modest and like neutral tones, did that reflect a need to shield herself and her unborn child? And then the one thing that people are not really even considering when I'm looking at, the landscape of commentary on this case, the irony of facing abusers in a space where appearance is weaponized. Something to consider. Something to consider. Again, congratulations, Cassie. I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. If you made it this far, drop a sunflower emoji or GIF in the comments below. And this is the last segment for today's episode, Fashion Psychology Optics, where we seek to cut through illusions, tracing how generational trauma and power dynamics weave themselves into the patterns we wear every day and the ones we dare to break. This segment begins with a truth, a quote from myself. Every predator or prey was once a child, and the bravest of them all, they unraveled the pattern. I'll repeat myself. Every predator or prey was once a child, and the bravest of them all choose to unravel the pattern. There's an old saying, a mother knows her child. And in psychology, when we reference the parent-to-child relationship or the mother-to-son relationship, we call on the Oedipus complex, which is the unresolved wounds we inherit from our parents that unconsciously seek to repeat with our partners. It's what's taking place on an unconscious level. But what happens when the parent enables this harm? When we watch Janice Combs sit in the courtroom, questions surface. Did she know what her son was doing? And if she knew, did she enable it? And if she enabled it, where did she learn it from? And if we twist the Rubik's Cube around, where's her other child? Because we all know that most families have that one golden child and that one black sheep or scapegoat. I'll end this segment with fashion isn't just fabric. It's the language of our scars and our survival. At Fashion Psychology TV, we dispel illusions, we see through the patterns, and we find the courage to break them. My name is Dr. Dawnn Karen. I am your host for this episode. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining me in your part of the world. Until next time. Are you tired of 12-step boxes? Well, try 14 steps of sunlight. Join me and my fashion psychology survivors' relationship with our clothing in my Runway Healing Circle, where fashion meets recovery and every stitch tells a story. Survivors worldwide are welcome. Click the link below to heal through style, not just in spite of it. Survivors, or should I say sunflowers, turn toward the light even after the darkest nights, and so can you. Have you always wanted to decode fashion's hidden language? Train under Dr. Dawnn Karen, the world's first fashion psychologist, and become certified in the science of style. Transform lives starting with your own. Visit FashionPsychologyInstitute.com to begin. Clothing is the last unbroken dialect. Be the interpreter.